All right, all right. Guess we're getting ready to go live. All right, all right. I guess we're going live. Welcome everyone to Dorsey's Resource. The title of this video is going to be The Wizard of Oz's Connection to Redemption Education to be continued. Okay, let me mute out this other screen. All right. I guess we're going live. Welcome everyone to Dorsey's Resource. The title of this video is going to be Hold on, guys. The Wizard of Oz's Connection to Redemption Education to be continued. Okay, let's mute out ready to go live. This other screen. All right. I guess we're going live. Welcome everyone to Dorsey's Resource. The title of this video is going to be Hold on, guys. The Wizard of Oz's Connection to Redemption Education to be continued. Okay, let's mute out ready to go live. This screen. All right. I guess we're going live. Welcome everyone to Dorsey's Resource. The title of this video is going to be Hold on, guys. Okay, there we go. Okay, let me see if I can reduce this screen. Sorry about the feedback, guys. I'm still getting used to the Zoom software. I had to delete from the previous video. You guys weren't able to join the chat, so I was able to fix that. I'm still, however, learning this software. I used a different web browser. I ended up deleting the other web browser, by the way. But thank you guys for joining me. This is going to be a continuation of the previous video I had done. Just to give you guys a heads up, I know Currency 365 has shared, big shout out to, by the way, had shared the previous video. So this is really like a part 2 of the whole series, of part 1. I have some PDF files pulled up. I'm not really sure exactly how long I'm going to be before you guys. However, there is a plethora of information I wanted to cover. There's a lot to unpack with this, and you guys are going to see. Hopefully, if I don't forget, remind me, go to, if you get a chance, if you're wondering why I'm going over this information, it's very critical. Go check out resetwars.com. It's called resetwars.com. There's some information on there I was reading through. I haven't joined yet. I didn't know that this was some type of membership. I'm not saying the name of who, but this information is sort of tied in basically with some things that are coming down the pipeline to give you guys a better understanding of what's going on overall. I've gotten many questions in the past about of course, what's happening with the what. There's certain things, YouTube won't allow you to discuss or talk about anymore. So you kind of have to read in between the lines. But I recommend after this video and you guys free time, it's not any rush. It's what I tell sometimes relatives and friends when I'm giving them information to research. They feel like they're in a hurry. Never feel like you're in a hurry. I want you guys to pace yourself. It's very detrimental and it's very important while I'm going over this information. There's some things I can't just be clearly explicit with, even when I teach different processes I've talked about in redemption education. I could do like some other channels out there that give a lot of information. Some are still, I've noticed some flaws, by the way, and I can break those things down. But the reason I don't sometimes go in depth with certain topics or more in depth. Sometimes you guys have told me a long time ago, because I've been on YouTube for quite a while, that I gave out too much information. I've had close friends tell me that, but this will help you. It's related to the redemption education, with some call sovereignty. I don't profess to be a sovereign citizen, or that's an umbrella term. Keep in mind that's used to discredit people, that's used to discourage people from looking into this type of information. By the way, similar to how they accuse people of being conspiracy theorists. I'm a realist. There's a such thing as conspiracy reality. Those are two separate words. Keep in mind, conspiracy is when individuals conspire. A theory is something that's theoretical, that hasn't been proven. There are things that are a fact that have been proven. What I intend to go over in this continuation of this video dealing with the Wizard of Oz is it's a coded movie, by the way, that dealt with a lot of things, how we operate in this system of commerce, by the way. It's tied in with the banking system, and I have a lot in store for you guys. But as usual, before we get started more in depth, I like to give a disclaimer. Keep in mind, this video is not financial. This is not legal. This is not tax advice. In the event you feel you need to seek a competent professional, please keep in mind it is encouraged for everyone to do their own homework and research in the matter being discussed. This information is not to be construed as legal advice. In the event you feel you need to seek a competent professional, it is encouraged you do so at one's own leisure. Dorsey's Resource Channel is not liable or responsible for anyone's misuse of the information. Please keep in mind, everyone is responsible for their own commercial affairs. Dorsey's Resource, all rights are reserved. And that's pretty much it. So for educational, informational purposes, now let's get into this. I'm going to share my screen. By the way, I know I can get really going. I'm going to share this part real quick. So hopefully I had to mute myself out earlier. I was getting feedback. So as we continue from the previous video, I was reading from the 3 fictional characters, the Scarecrow, by the way, which represents, of course, a number of things. These are allegories. I went over how this is a coded movie. I'm reading from part of the redemption manual. There's another document I have pulled up. If you guys can see my screen, I'm going to pull this over. Scroll this over. It says Wizard of Oz, an allegory. An allegory parable is the expression of truths about human conduct and experience by means of symbolic fictional figures and actions. Such was the movie Wizard of Oz, an allegory of the state of affairs we now live in today, an allegory of the unfolding New World Order that was instituted in America via stock market crash of 1929 and the bankruptcy of the United States in 1933. The settling of this allegory is in Kansas, the heartland of America, the geographical center of the USA. In came the twister, the whirling confusion of the Great Depression, the stock market crash, the U.S. bankruptcy, and the theft of America's gold that whisked Dorothy and Toto up into the new order of the world, an artificial new dimension somewhere over the rainbow above the solid ground of Kansas. When they landed in Oz, Dorothy commented to her little dog, Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore. Exactly. After the bankruptcy of the United States, Kansas was no longer Kansas anymore. It is now KS, a 2-capital letter federal postal designation that is part of the federal zone. This is important. When I read from Cracking the Code a while ago, when I read from that manual, it was like an earlier version of the redemption manual. By the way, Yusufel is covered, Cracking the Code. He's shown things, going over that. Many of you guys that have been or known about redemption, aka sovereignty, many years ago, remember Cracking the Code. The redemption manual that I'm reading from was released some years ago. It was like a newer version, and there was different groups of people that worked together, by the way, just to kind of give you guys a little background. But Cracking the Code, the reason I'm bringing that up, there was a section in there where it talked about, and if I find that again, I can cover that too, that talks about the rules of grammar are distinct, just like you have rules in the legal system, the judicial system. When I gave you guys some homework to look up what legalese means. Legalese means it's been used to replace plain English. You know how when you look up the definition of a word, the terminology, how different dictionaries will list multiple meanings. Well, that was one of the meanings. It mentions it's been used to replace plain English. So effectively within the court system, they speak in a cryptic language. That's been done on purpose, done intentionally to make it difficult for those in the general public that have never had a legal background. This is a corrupt way where the cabal can use their gatekeepers, their minions and underlings to control people in societies, by the way, because I was informed privately by one of my contacts, this was many years ago, by one of my very knowledgeable sources, that lawyers, believe it or not, have a form of dual citizenship, by the way. Yes, keep in mind, you know how when I went over contracts, there's different types of contracts, like your marriage license, driver's license, beautician license, you have fishing license, many type of licenses, even high-low licenses for those I was looking at different jobs in the manufacturing realm, that, you know, and sub licenses, those are forms of contract, by the way. Many of you all are already aware, but the reason this is important, what this implies is that you already have a right to do certain things. But however, when the statutory side took over, when they moved away from common law many years ago and they brought in the statutory realm, the government needed an interface to conduct how it conducts business with citizens. And by doing this, they entice you through benefit privileges. By the way, benefit privileges, this is a key word. And this is how they entrap people in some of these contracts. There are ways to get out, but the cabal has done things, the ruling class, some of their minions, their gatekeepers, their underlinks, what other names, their villains, I call them, etc., have made it more difficult to free oneself within this matrix. And that movie is tied in. This is a separate movie that was coded as well. There's symbolisms with that movie as well, by the way. So in Redemption Manuals, I was going over this part that I was reading from after the bankruptcy of the United States, which says Kansas was no longer Kansas anymore. It is now KS, a 2 capital letter federal postal designation that is part of the federal zone, designated by the zone improvement zip parentheses that has zip code established by the bankrupt United States in 1933. Then it has hyphen, and Dorothy and Total were now in this state. The terms in this state, this is like the fictional world, because you have a difference, for example, between United States of America and United States America. Just as I was informed, there's 2 different types of constitutions. There's the Constitution of the United States, and then there's the Constitution for the United States. One deals with the organic law. Another is statutory law, where they can come in secretly and cabal people and do things if you're operating a certain way under these contracts. By the way, that I kind of mentioned earlier, I had planned to kind of go into something else because it's so much to unpack. Sometimes I lose my train of thought and going over this high-powered information. But however, I'll come back if I remember what the connection that I was drawing when I brought up the different contracts that deals with, for example, your driver's license, your marriage license. That's a form of a contract. By the way, you know, certain states are community property states, meaning you have a spouse, a husband. Oh, that's another trick word too, by the way. When I went over the etymology, remember in the previous video when I went over lie and bury the truth, husband is house bond. By the way, normally, you know how in the marriages, generally speaking, nowadays, some women decide to keep their maiden name, but you know, it was a tradition where they would take on the husband's name, by the way. And there's some history behind that, but husband translates words of trickery like a turn. Attorney means a turn. Look up the prefixes and suffixes of these words will help out. I still have to do research myself to give you guys an idea. A turn means to twist. A turnee, a turn on you, a twist. Look up a turn means to twist, by the way. So there's a play on words, and there's even these last names, surnames that people have, generally speaking, translate to the lineages where some of these people's, their families came from. Like I was explaining to a friend of mine some years ago, I was breaking down to him. I think he went to school in California. He since graduated and everything. He went into, I think, forms of psychology. He was a former U.S. Marine. And he told me about his last name, Smothers. He told me it was a variation of the name Smith, by the way. So when I helped share some information about the Illuminati, the ruling class, and I mentioned how there's a pecking order established with these surnames like Smith. You also had Gunsmith, you had Goldsmith, you had Swordsmith. So you see the different professions. So as years later, sometimes people will work in disciplines or fields, career fields related to these disciplines going back hundreds of years ago or even in ancient times. And sometimes there's connections to draw with what these names mean. Like Rothschild means it's a translation. The original surname was Bauer. But when Amschel had to escape Frankfurt, Germany, after, if you watch believe it's Money Masters documentary or Ring of Power, Empire of the City. They go over this, how they discovered the Illuminati that was founded by Adam Weishaupt, who was commissioned by Lord Amschel Rothschild back in the 1700s, discovered the same year as the United States, 1776. Cryptically, if you pull out the back of a dollar bill, if you have a magnifying glass on this pyramid in Roman numerals, it's to translate to 1776, which is also the same year that America, United States, was founded, by the way. And there's, there's symbolism, but that's also the year, a symbolic year when the Illuminati was formed. They were combined, by the way, if you go through the story, Amschel Bauer commissioned Adam Weishaupt, by the way, is his name. I was almost losing my train of thought, to infiltrate the Freemasons, by the way. This is how they, you had different chapters, different secret societies, which I've gone over in the past, but a lot of this information is tied in, it's interconnected, it's cryptic, just like this dollar bill and other notes, Federal Reserve notes, because this is not money, even though we're in a habit, we're used to calling this money. Notice at the top, it says Federal Reserve note. This is copywritten by the Federal Reserve Bank. This is printed, even though this is a physical representation. In fractional reserve banking, they print money out of thin air, or they can loan up to 90% of what you have on deposit. That's called fractional reserve banking, when they can loan up. But we know, and they also burn, I was informed many years ago, similar to how they do cryptocurrency burns, they burn a certain amount of Federal Reserve notes too. One of my mentors many years ago, big shout out to Del Rico for assisting me many years ago, explain that to me. I didn't understand it at the time when I first started learning about this information back in 04, going into 05 area. I remember I met him in 04, November of 04, a music artist named Daryl, who used to live in the city of Detroit, introduced me to. Daryl had owned a demolition company and a mill company. I think he's since moved out state. He may be in California by now, but big shout out to those brothers. And he broke down to me many years ago that they burned a certain number of Federal Reserve notes. So I'm kind of, piecing together some things, how it has some similarities to how they do cryptocurrency burns in a sense. But this at one time used to be backed by physical precious metals. Remember, the prove this, if you go in a coin shop, some coin shops, what do you call those places? Currency dealers. Sometimes currency dealers and coin shops are combined with one another, just like jewelry shops and coin dealers are combined. You can purchase like memorabilia or older notes, older forms of this Federal Reserve notes, which some of them would say silver certificates, or say redeemable in silver on demand by, and there's a way cryptically to tap into that gets into advanced information dealing with redemption. See, there's things I haven't even covered, by the way. There's secrets that I know, and I know where that process comes from. I know the name of the guy from in the redemption movement that came with the process. Well, I won't go into that because people will be blowing me up. They'll be wondering, trying to get consultation if I go into those details. But it's a reason why I don't go over some of the heavier type of information, because there's bad actors, there's cabal people who watch my channel, these videos, and we need really good, genuine people in the world. We need more good, genuine men and women to rise up. There's a saying that is quote from many years ago, don't quote me exactly on it, that when good men do nothing, that evil rises or prevails. So we need more good men and women with integrity. That implies honesty, loyalty, trustworthiness, by the way, that will do the right thing, because these cabal people, they set this up. This is why I'm going over this allegory from this movie. I haven't forgotten, but these things, while I'm going over these other things, are tied in with this. Forgive me for the background noise, by the way. So that's why I have to speak a little bit louder, by the way, because you have the furnace in here going. So as I was going over this note, it's very symbolic, a lot of symbolism on the Federal Reserve notes, but I just wanted to give you guys some evidence, some proof, how I do research, to also research. Part of my disclaimer when I say I encourage everyone to do their own homework, do their own research. Don't take my word for what I say. Research, by the way. So to finish, as I was going over, you guys should be able to see my screen about Dorothy and Toto, this fictional world, how they established the federal reserve zones with the states. There's two different types of states as well. There's the state, like for example, there's the state of Ohio, then there's Ohio, the state. One represents the corporation, the other represents the physical land, which is tied in with the commonwealth, common law. Just like they mentioned, for example, that people have to be careful when doing this type of information, not to commingle. You have that same rule applies to public officials. So I saw some things that took place this past election here in the state of Michigan, where the legislature, the governor, had commingled jurisdictions when they didn't have the authority to do certain things. By the way, was fraudulent. I won't go into details about that because, you know, of course, YouTube doesn't allow you to talk about certain things anymore. Well, however, I am on Rumble and other platforms. So once I'll let you guys know, I'll keep you posted. Once I'm able to transition over to these other platforms, which I encourage you to, Brighteon.com, Band.video, Free World News TV, FrankSpeech.com is growing exponentially. Rumble is a tremendous platform. I'm on Rumble as well. I just have to upload more videos. I can go a lot more in depth. By the way, it'll be like the equivalent of Patreon, because there's still, even for advanced people, there's things that we forget about that's very important, that it's important to go back to the basics. Like when I trained in martial arts many years ago, my sensei said, before I teach you the advanced moves, he said, you got to get the basics down. He said, once you get the basics down, that's the foundation. Once you get your foundation down, then everything else, it will flow a lot more congruent. It will be more conducive. It's very similar. A lot of people want to just jump, say, how do I get to the $1 million and a birth certificate? Well, how do I discharge debt? How do I do this? How do I get the passport to become a national? I don't want to do this. I want to do that. You got to get the basics down. That's why I harp on the basics. The basics, the foundation is very, very important. Even for people, even like this goes for myself. I put the onus on myself. Even for people that are advanced, because there's things that I forget about. There's things I've talked to where people were advanced and there were certain things they hadn't done. They're still registered voters. By the way, that's one of the things, if you're in England or Canada and you want to do this type of information, just like in the States, one of the first things you need to do, make sure you get rid of that voter registration. That is a contract. By the way, also over here, I forget to mention, it's tied in with being an organ donor as well. You don't want to be an organ donor either. Excuse me, that's another benefit privilege adhesion contract, to be more specific. It's a hidden adhesion contract, but when certain individuals have to renew their driver's licenses, for example, which is another form of a contract you guys heard me mention earlier, by the way, and it's not a coincidence that when you look at your driver's license, that your name is in all capital letters. You know, that's not a coincidence. In the legal system, as I went over in a previous video, that is the legal fiction, legal person. That's capitis diminution maxima. That is also the in lingus. Matter of fact, I have, I'm gonna pull that up real quick. Hopefully you guys should be able to see my screen. It says, what is in lingus? In lingus is a creature of law, an artificial being as contrasted with a natural person. It says, applied to corporations considered as deriving their existence entirely from the law. This was one form of the definition. I copied and pasted this some years ago, a while ago, in a Word document. In lingus says it has Latin, a creature of the law, an artificial being. Okay, I read that part already. It says Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition, 1951, hereinafter, Black's 4. Okay. It says in lingus is the precise legal description of the all capital letters name. You see, you notice how certain individuals will try to play funny, but you have to understand, excuse me, there's different processes in a redemption education. I know some people are trying to say you don't own the birth certificate and stuff like this. There is a way you can recapture control. Remember, you own nothing, you control everything. But what it was, when the contract, the charter, which is your BC, the Articles of Incorporation, were created when you were born, because your parents unknowingly signed you over as wardens of the state, by the way, through the BC, the bond certificate, birth certificate, which is a form of a registered security, unknowingly. But you were not competent when this took place too. So this was a form of fraud. There's a suit I hear going on by some brothers out there that are working on this, by the way, because this was not done in an equitable fashion. This is a violation of everyone's due process law. Everyone has a birth certificate, because as an infant, you were not competent enough to be able to agree to this contract. By the way, to sum it up, it goes more in depth than that, by the way, but that's where they committed the fraud. They committed massive fraud, treason. Even I hear nowadays they're digitizing this with the hospitals and stuff, because we're moving in more of the digital age, by the way. So just like I said, guys, I know it's a lot to unpack. So this document's pretty long, and I know I can be long-winded, so guys, bear with me. But I know, as Currency 365 said, I guess he saw I was going over some high-powered, action-packed information. This is the equivalent of a master class, by the way. So you guys getting it here free on YouTube, by the way. And keep in mind, once I'm able to acclimate to these other platforms and things, I'll be able to start doing maybe more classes like this, going more in depth, tying things in to draw the connection. It's important you connect the dots, by the way. And then down the road, hopefully I can maybe, get memberships and things of that sort. If other things don't take place, by the way, which can help grow the channel, help me get to the next level, by the way, because there are people out there. There's quite a bit of people that are teaching this redemption education, and that's cool and everything. But also keep in mind, there's a lot of different processes, and I know people can feel bombarded with a lot of information. That's why I feel it's important. Once you go over the basics and you have the basics down, you'll understand those different processes, procedures a lot better. By the way, it says in the 1930s, the all capital letters written name straw man. Okay, I skipped over a little bit. I'm gonna jump back up. The terms in this state, and state are deceptively defined for tax jurisdiction purposes as the District of Columbia, aka the United States Incorporated, or the corporate United States. That's what I was alluding to earlier. I actually have, and I've gone over this in a previous video. So this is already documented. By the way, if you guys have followed my channel, some of you guys may be newbies. This information is for a lot of newbies. This is why I go over recurring information. When some of you guys have said, well, oh, Dorsey, I've heard this already. Go to something else, go to something new. But keep in mind, even for myself, we might forget things that are important, even for advanced people. Or when I'm getting a lot of new people, there's a stampede of people who want to know about this type of information. And this helps out tremendously, even when you're doing other processes, other procedures, by the way. So as I was going over earlier, they created another type, the corporate, that entity. They also refer to your all caps. It's a different type of corporation versus an LLC or C Corp. It's referred to as an entity, legal person, legal fiction. So I went over that part. This next paragraph, it says in the 1930s, all capital letters, written name, straw man, the newly created artificial person that has no brain and speaks and acts for itself once upon a time sovereign. That's the scarecrow, the straw man. You and me was created while Americans were confused and distracted by the commotion caused by the introduction of the New World Order of communistic socialism to figure out that they even had a straw man with which to contend. The scarecrow identified this straw man persona for Dorothy. Thusly, some people without brains do an awful lot of talking. Of course, I'm not bright about doing things. In this classic song, If Only I Had a Brain, the scarecrow / straw man succinctly argued, I'd unravel every riddle for every individual in trouble or pain. I read that in the other document that I have pulled up right now, the other PDF file, by the way, in the previous video. So I'm going to jump to this next part. because there was a key word individual translates to individual. It had in parentheses in the redemption manual document. If we jump to real quick, if I scroll up some, see this last part before I'm about to start on this next paragraph, and it said every individual, and it had individual in parentheses. And I also mentioned you want to look that definition of that word up, just like I encourage you guys, look up the definition of the word person. There's a difference between the definition, the legal definition of natural person versus person. There's a legal difference, because remember when I mentioned legalese, look up the definition of legalese, how in the court system, they can speak, even though they still can use English, certain words that we use, certain terminology that we use in this English dialect. For example, I was watching the hearing of those two parents who were charged for that young man that did that horrible, event that happened in Michigan recently that made national news. I was watching their hearing with the Oakland County Attorney General, for Oakland County. By the way, I think her name was Karen McDonald, and there was some other sub attorney generals. I was watching the hearing, the bond hearing or whatever they call it, and I noticed the judge asked them a key word: do you understand the charges that are being held against you? And they say yes. Did you know understand? This is one of the things I learned many years ago. Within a court system, has a different meaning than just from what we were taught in grade school. The reason I use this term quite a bit, it's an easy example. It's an easy breakdown. By the way, like we were taught in grade school, the word understand means to comprehend. But did you know in the legal system, when you say, yes, I understand, that means you agree, you were complying with the contract. Like I remember years ago when I received my first speeding ticket, I was driving my mother's car some years ago back in Allen Park, Michigan. I was on what road was that? Southfield Freeway heading towards 94. By the way, because at that time we were living in Belleville, had a long commute. By the way, it's an interesting time period. By the way, but when the police officer pulled me over at the time, it was the first time I was ever pulled over. And I paid the ticket. My mom, she told me, said, you're paying this ticket. That was like $150. And I had just started. I was working at Boston Market in Dearborn at the time, many years ago. And the police officer said to me, you do understand you were doing 72 miles per hour in a 55 mile per hour zone. And me unknowingly at the time, many years ago, I said, yes, sir. He said, you do understand you were speeding. You do understand. When they're repeating, saying you do understand, and the more I'm saying yes, I'm agreeing, they're getting your compliance, by the way, which is another form. It's a verbal contract, but it's tied in, with the signature. So very interesting. A lot of people don't know, but this applies to a lot of other judicial terms in the Black's Law Dictionary, even terms in Webster's that we may think were just regular terms. They have a different meaning legally. So understand there's a difference legally versus, so that's how they use trickery over the general public. This is a form of subterfuge. This is what Akeem L, who's highly advanced, I give kudos to in a redemption education, one of the most advanced people along with Jonah Bay and Yusuf El, by the way. Big shout out to those brothers, highly advanced. I commend their work. I'm a fan of the work that they do, by the way. So just giving credit where credit is due. By the way, but I can't mention that I noticed in the video some years ago, I saw, he has a YouTube channel, how they're using subterfuge. Look up that term. A lot of this, if you look up the older material that used to be free online that dealt with redemption, education, sovereignty, before Scribs took a lot of those documents. A good friend of mine told me that's owned by the Discovery Channel. By the way, they used to be free. There's still certain sites that are still out there, but they're not as easily accessible, with the suppression, with the search engines, the shadow banning, by the way, which I believe took place in the previous video I did on this topic. By the way, even Currency 365 mentioned that video shadow ban, because it seems like this information is tied in with the banking system or freeing people. YouTube seems to shadow ban. So make sure you guys share this video far and wide if you can. Make sure if you haven't done already, smash the like button. It helps the channel out, helps the channel grow, helps the reach. So don't forget to smash the like button and make sure you subscribe to Dorsey's Resource. Hit the notification bell so whenever I put out new videos, new content, you guys will receive the update. So where was I leaving off? I know it's a lot of information to unpack that I go over. The scarecrow identified. Okay, I went over that. Part. Okay, we're down to individual. Okay, that's why I mentioned look up these terms, what they mean, and specifically in the Black's Law Dictionary. If you have the 6th edition, the 4th edition is good. And keep in mind, if you can't afford them yet, you may even be able to find free versions online. Just to give you a hint, wink, wink. You may be able to download if you Google or Yahoo search, wink, wink, until you have the funds to be able to order a physical copy. But I recommend, I have the 6th edition. Once I build my funds up, I've heard the 4th edition is good. I've heard the 2nd. This is before the modern day versions that came out. They remove a lot of information. They do abridged versions where that's why you have a lot of lawyers and stuff. They're not really practicing the law anymore. They're skipping over stuff, by the way. And this is what they're doing with words. In the older versions, you'll have words you may not be able to find, certain definitions. Like look up District of Columbia. By the way, look up in some of the Black's Law dictionaries, it should have the definition of United States, by the way. So this section of this paragraph says individual, a United States government employee, Title 5 USC, Section 552A, the Internal Revenue Code, and all state tax codes are in harmony with the above definition of individual by reference only. A corporation of one is an artificial person constructed by law, not a living, breathing man or woman, an individual. Remember, I just read the definition of in lingus, and it specifically mentioned how it dealt with the all capital letters name. You can also look up these terms using online encyclopedias. By the way, they're just as good. By the way, look up the definition of natural person and person. Even if you don't have access to, or before you can afford to purchase a Black's Law dictionary or Bouvier's dictionary to look these terms up, you can also do a Yahoo or Google search easily, or a Bing search engine, whatever search engine to your liking, by the way, to look these terms up. So don't take my word for what I say. And it's good to cross-reference, compare notes with the other terms, the other different types of definitions, because, you know, definitions could have multiple versions. By the way, it says a corporation of one is an artificial person constructed by law, not a living, breathing man or woman. An individual is a public corporate persona existing only in public, it has in parentheses, government domain, having been created by law, not by God. Okay. You see, okay, it says the drafters of codes and laws take everyday common speech and give it arcane and cryptic meanings that are generally unknown and unknowable to the uninitiated, even after serious study. Yes, that is true. That's what they do in the legal system. That's been done on purpose. Let me read that again. This is important. It says the drafters of codes and laws take everyday common speech and give it an arcane and cryptic meanings that are generally unknown and unknowable to the uninitiated, even after serious study. That's why some were saying when this English language was created as a form of trickery. I heard there was a saying years ago, allegedly, I don't know if this could be some truth to it. They would say the Native Americans would tell the white man or the cowboys speak with a forked tongue, a two-sided tongue, meaning there's two-sided duality, that this language, it could be more concise, but these terms, things were created this way on purpose, by the way. There was a lot of trickery that's going on. Just putting it out there. Okay, close that out. Okay, scroll down. Okay, to this next section. It says, therefore, most folks are commercially, legally, and financially enslaved because of their ignorance of the true situation. Even knowing that ignorance of the law is no excuse, they find themselves helpless, unarmed, and uninformed. That's just like with gatekeepers. When they're ignorant, they oftentimes, there's a saying, ignorance of the law is no excuse. They oftentimes can harm people in the public as well. It says, even knowing that ignorance of the law is no excuse, they find themselves helpless. Okay, I read that part. Upon close examination, one can see a direct tie in with America's secret establishment known as the Order of Skull and Bones, as it was brought about to bring down the United States of America. Its members have penetrated just about every significant research policy, opinion-making organization in the United States, as well as many of the leading educational institutions, also known as the dumbing down of America. Don't forget, if you guys get a chance, check out resetwars.com. Go to band.video. But check out, just at least read it. If you guys don't join, know everybody doesn't have the money, but if you do have deep pockets, whatever, it would behoove you. And what would be critical is if you want to sponsor someone else who can't afford and joining with that individual. I'm just not going over that person's name that has that set up, but read that information. This is very real about the ruling class. Those that have questions, they do exist. This is not a joke. This is not a game. What they brought in, it's not a coincidence that Ding Ding and Ho Ho were brought in to take out Trump to get rid of 45. And you guys see they're pushing this poison, which is a fact. Many people are being killed, are dying. Look at VAERS. And CDC mentioned about the amount of people that died, but they're only listing about 1%, what certain doctors were saying. Only about 1%. So even 17,000, that's still quite a bit of people the CDC listed as deaths that were related to the you-know-what. So this is not a coincidence. Another reason why I'm going over this information, it's important to understand who's behind this. It says, if you had trouble reading the previous sentence, blame your poor educational experience as a result of the influence of the Skull and Bones and its members. This is what it's saying in that paragraph. Translation, it says, once we discover that our straw man exists, that's the lingus in the court system, that we have co-signed for him by signing by accommodation, political and legal mysteries, complexities, and confusions are resolved. When we take title to our straw man UCC1 financing statement, which they've made it harder, much harder to do those, by the way, and then that's due to certain gatekeepers and minions who are brought in as agents, paid government agents, some of them shills, to try to put a thwart and make it difficult, as well as some gatekeepers unknowingly. It says we protect ourselves from any liabilities that we might otherwise incur. There's other ways to bulletproof oneself. Remember, I mentioned get rid of that voter registration. You cannot be sovereign and be a registered voter. And especially if you're minority, also don't volunteer to be an organ donor. Those are benefit privileges. Even if you do check the U.S. citizen box, I know in Michigan, you're supposed to have the ability to opt out, even if you do it online. By the way, you have the ability to opt out. Remember, certain individuals, say a certain political party, by the way, you notice I was trying to make that mandatory and just say they want to make that mandatory too, to be registered. Just something to think about when they pulled what they pulled around this time last year, by the way. Very interesting, by the way, I would say. I don't think coincidence. Okay, this next section. The Tin Man, our taxpayer identification number, is a hollow man of 10, a vessel or vehicle newly created, code words for our straw man. Not being sexist here, as one could say, hollow woman of 10 or straw woman. Okay, well, I see this article. They're trying to be fair, politically correct. I respect that. It says, just as the straw man has no brains, these deal with fit, not live person. So if you do consider yourself non-binary, I respect that, understand. But meaning when we needed, the concept is when we needed to enter into government contracts, which is why they offer you benefit privileges, like these different corporations want you to sign up for their different rewards cards, membership like Bass Pro Shops, rewards cards, Kohl cards, Best Buy cards. Remember when Sears was around, sign up for Sears card, Home Depot, Lowe's. They're always trying to get you in a contract. It's best to do those things through a different entity and not through your legal fiction. Because when you do those things through your legal fiction, this is some advance. I just dropped you guys a jewel. When you do those things through your legal fiction, it ties you in and will keep you from being able to get that top passport status, to get that full 5 stars, even a 4-star. It will pull you back because when they see the certain entity sees how you're conducting business, they look at those other types of contracts you're entering into behind the scenes. But there's a certain government department, I'm just not saying, by the way, that would be for a higher, advanced, top tier course, by the way. Some of you all already know. They can see how you're conducting commerce. If you want to change your status, dealing with status correction, which is real, by the way, contrary to popular belief. Okay, so I went over that part. Okay, it says 10 man. Okay, already read that. Just as the straw man has no brains, the 10 man vessel / has vehicle has no heart. Both are artificial persons. Person equals persona equals mass. It says, learn up on the word person. Yes. Persons are divided by law into natural and artificial. Natural persons are persons created by God, and artificial persons are persons devised by human law for the purpose of governing them as corporations of one or bodies politics. So they're meaning you have the statutory side and the non-statutory. The statutory deals with the corporations. The 14th Amendment says the precise definition of the term person is therefore necessary to identify those to whom the 14th Amendment to the Constitution affords its protections and liabilities, since the 14th Amendment expressly applies to persons. Yes, by certain applications, ask, are you a 14th Amendment U.S. citizen? Are you a corporate person? Notice a lot of applications ask you that. And how this is a form of subterfuge. Had a friend of mine that told me someone I've known for a while works for one of the big 3 auto companies. I won't go into the details about the type of work. He told me not too long ago, they had on the application, he said he was pretty surprised, but I found out some people from another source that I have this led from lawsuits where they are supposed to give you another option on a job application other than just being, if it asks you, are you a U.S. citizen, or you have resident alien and you also have illegal alien. Some will just blatantly ask you, well, one just speaks for itself. But when they're just only has one part, is not asking you about foreign national, about being a national. This individual that works for one of the big 3 told me on the application, he saw something on there. He said he was surprised pertaining to national, by the way. He told me he went through a procedure prior when he went to collect unemployment. He did it a different type of way versus the regular way when they ask you, are you a U.S.? Because see what they're doing, they're creating entrapment. They're not supposed to do that. They're violating your due process of law. That's what the criminality, which makes this very egregious. We understand the ruling class. Remember, Pastor Lindsey Williams said his elite buddies, even though we know they set up this cabal system, but they're supposed to provide you a way out. And he said they're supposed to warn you. Where they violated those raw laws and where everything's off the table is when they do things when they're egregiously violating your due process, but that's not giving warning, or they're putting you in situations of entrapment. By the way, you guys get what I'm saying. So that's why in the redemption education, it's been very tough for people throughout the years, where many people have given up, similar to the symbolism of the cowardly lion that represented, they say, also Americans who lose their courage in fighting the system in general, or dealing with the gatekeepers and the many things that the fraudulent ones are doing. By the way, they make it more difficult when they're inhibiting people's rights that they already have. There's certain rights, even though you're contracting, by the way, there's a lot of other things that there's corrupt things they're doing they're not supposed to do. They're supposed to abide by that statutory side. So they're commingling in the private side, common law, they're violating that. And that's why certain lawsuits like federal court, a guy, the brother I mentioned earlier, Del Rico, told me years ago, I think he did some things with the federal court versus the lower courts. And he told me they had a tendency to honor the Constitution more so than the lower court judges. The lower court judges were more so de facto. They like to do things as they wanted to see fit. But he said, generally speaking, federal courts judges, some of them can be corrupt too. But he mentioned that they were, with the way his suits were geared towards his affidavits, he said they honored the Constitution more so, at least during that time period. And I noticed when I went to the federal court downtown, they had listed on the inside, I don't know if they still do, they had a painting on the wall before you got on the elevator. They had the whole Bill of Rights listed, by the way. So I was surprised to see that with as much, criminality that takes place or whatever. And there's a reason why that's like for another a top tier advanced course. By the way, I don't want to go too far above you guys. Some I may have. So, okay, I read that. A straw man is a person with a fictitious name written in legalese. Remember, I went over that word earlier. Language foreign to the rules of grammar. Flesh and blood, men and women with names, titles, written in hand, cursive, with initial letters only capitalized, are not persons, even though they are referred to as natural persons at times. That's where they're getting your acquiescence when you aren't given disclosure, when many were not being taught the real information in the educational system. This is what I kind of refer to when you guys hear me mention this is unconventional education. I did a video on this in the past where I said redemption education is unconventional. You guys have to scroll way back on my channel whenever I did that video. Okay, know what I'm going to do? I know there's like a delay, but I'm going to jump to the chat section. Normally, I try to acknowledge you guys, by the way, in the chat section. If you guys haven't already, don't forget to hit the thumbs up, smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't, at Dorsey's Resource. Okay, we says Zach Nevu says, what up, Dorsey? What up, Zach? Appreciate you joining. Gerald Jelk says here, sup. Zach says, what up, G? Okay, appreciate you, Gerald. Mary Saunders says, hello, Mr. Dorsey. Appreciate you, Mary. Thank you for joining. Joe Jelk says, no, thank you. She Vegas says, peace, Dorsey. Muscle sign, greetings. Have to watch the replay. I appreciate you. Yeah, I know it's late. If you guys got to turn in, I understand. Appreciate you joining. Stephen Wilcox says, people in Kentucky need help and could use this information. Okay, got it. Big shout out to you. Thank you for joining, Stephen. Byron Bow says, hey, family. What's up, family? Appreciate you. Well, thank all for joining so far. So hopefully you guys are enjoying what I'm going over. I'm going to go back to my other screen. By the way, I'm reading from, this is a continuation of the Redemption, the Wizard of Oz connection to the Redemption education series part 2. This is part 2 of the series. So if you saw the versions that were broken up by Currency 365, this is another like advanced master class. This is part 2. So I probably will be working on a part 3 down the road, by the way. So I read that. Okay. It said it as impossible for a person to be a natural as it is for a man to be artificial. Person is a silent artificial construct hatched up by lawyers to be used and controlled by lawyers' encrypted codes. One of the definitions of tin found in Webster's dictionary is counterfeit. The Tin Man represents the mechanical and heartless aspects of commerce and commercial law, just like they say in the mafia, as they throw you overboard, your feet in concrete overshoes, nothing personal, it's just business. Okay. The heartless Tin Man carry an axe, a traditional symbol for God and for modern commercial law in most dominant civilizations, including fascist states. In the word of the Tin Man, as he expressed relief after Dorothy had oiled his arm, I've held that axe up for ages. This is showing the symbolism. The word ace is etymology related to the word axe. Wow. Didn't really know that. In a deck of cards, the only card above the king is the ace, and it has dash God. One of the Axis powers of the World War II was a fascist state, Italy. The symbol for fascism is the fasces, a bundle of rods with an axe bound up in it with its blade sticking out. Okay, fasces may be found on the reverse of the American Mercury head dime. The Roman deity Mercury was the god of commerce. Now this is really getting into some stuff. My friend, good friend of mine, he's really good. I commend when I need assistance at breaking these terms down. He blows me away. That's where there's also a breakdown that goes this in depth with a lot of people's last names. Now we know throughout the years that people have been adopted and things of that sort, but it's ways to trace people's bloodline. The powers that be, the Illuminati, the ruling class, by the way, have ways where they when there's a saying, they know who you are. Like when every baby is born, I found out from watching this radio talk show host some years ago who was banned off of YouTube. He helped me connect some major dots. I hear he used to talk about a government corporation called DARPA. I found out DARPA stands for Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. That's what it's an acronym for. Well, there was a show I used to watch. It used to come on True TV some years ago called Conspiracy Theory with former Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura, also former Navy SEAL, former WWF wrestler. A man I commend the work that he's done. By the way, great show. Well, there was an episode he did many years ago, you guys may not remember, on called Targeted Individuals or something like that. And I had to figure out, when they interviewed these different people, they said that they were targeted, they would experience some type of health-related action that would hurt them if they would go by a lot of electricity or those big power lines or whatever. They would start getting sick, and they would say that they were affected in certain ways. Well, I figured out the only type of way that would be possible. I had to do some deep research some years ago, and the spirits gave this to me because I'm an empath. I'm naturally empathic. I'm an indigo child from years ago. And when I met my spirituality friends, I commend one of them I just mentioned, but there was another brother who was good at breaking astrology down. We used to meet at Panera Bread some years ago when I started learning how deep this stuff goes down a rabbit hole. When I was still waking up, I still had the blue pill, even though I was red pill. They helped provide another aspect. There's a saying, sword sharpens sword. And I appreciate these brothers. And I told him, he didn't think back then. I used to listen to the stuff they used to say. It would sound like disrespectful. They would say, you need to drink more water. You're dehydrated. That's one of the individuals would say. It was kind of funny when we look back. Some people take it as though if a person gives constructive criticism, they take it as though the person's being harsh, but the person can mean well and just saying they're genuinely concerned about your health, your well-being. But they will also talk about things like there was this movie that was done called Eyes Wide Shut by this movie producer called Stanley Kubrick or something like that. I think he passed away some years ago. Some people believe he died as a result in relation to a scene that he refused to edit from this movie called Eyes Wide Shut with the actor Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, by the way, that played in this movie. And it has some major symbolism. And he's done some things. I heard he used to do remote viewing. I was into some of those things years ago. I did remote viewing, astral projection. I'm familiar with that, lucid dreaming. I also took that in psychology in college, one of my college classes. By the way, I did a presentation as well. So I was wondering to tie in how people are affected by some of these things. As I was going over this connection to the Wizard of Oz and this episode that Jesse Ventura did called Targeted Individuals. And my spirituality brothers, I used to hear them mention in the background, they would mention things that would go above my head, but my subconscious mind still picked it up, which I learned from my psychology teacher in college. Even if you don't remember, she said your subconscious mind picks up everything. It records things. It's really amazing, the human mind, how they say we only use like 10%. Many of us don't tap into the other 90%, by the way. So I told my friend, I connected some major pieces when I listened. What reason I brought up the radio talk show host from years ago, and he used to bring up DARPA. He said DARPA, when every newborn baby is born, because I had to figure, I said, how were these individuals in this Jesse Ventura episode, how were they targeted, by the way? and this is tied in with what I just read from what I'm going over, how people are affected by this world of commerce that's hidden. Okay. Just trying to tie this in and help you guys connect the dots. So it's saying, as I read this part earlier, the Roman deity Mercury was the god of commerce. My friend did say that this is tied in with something with the ancient god Hermes. You study that, or Greek mythology. That's why there's a lot of symbolism, even with fraternities and sororities. That's not by coincidence. There's a correlation. If you know Capitol Hill, it's named after Capitoline Hill many years ago. There's a whole history behind it, like Washington, D.C., the way it was symbolically created. When I showed this dollar bill earlier, this stuff is encoded, encrypted, just like this movie, Wizard of Oz, also The Matrix, other films as well. So I was thinking, DARPA, that stands for Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, this radio talk show host mentioned in some of his episodes, he would hold back from saying certain information. He was since banned off of YouTube some years ago. He has his own platform now, which I recommend looking him up. I think he's a real patriot. He's a real American, despite negative things that have been said about him. I've watched his show for years. I follow him. I purchased many of his products. They are legit, by the way. They will try to divide us because I'm a black man. They try to put us against one another, but I don't buy that stuff. I've been following for years, and by me comparing notes and to many other people out there, you're going to get the truth from me, guys. I'm not going to make stuff up. I'm not going to lie. I'm not getting paid millions of dollars or being financed like CNN or MSNBC or their news anchors to read from a teleprompter. This is unfiltered. This is real information. So you're getting good quality info from things I've researched. And he mentioned DARPA will take the blood of every newborn baby born. So if they know your birth date, they create a birth certificate. And he said DARPA would store this information at the hospital. It will go to a secret database. So I said, that's it. That's how they targeted these individuals in that Jesse Ventura episode of targeted individuals. They used the technology, because I knew a scientist some years ago, a guy I know personally, I was close to, that told me he could create a device with frequencies that could target people, just like this other thing that's been used, getting into some other thing. And I was like, whoa, it sounds like some pretty scary stuff. And, anything can be used for good and positive or negative purposes. So he helped open my eyes. And when I said that DARPA, they take the blood, that means they have your astrological birth chart. They have your blood type. So they can tune certain frequencies of devices to target those particular people based on their specific blood type or their frequency they're emitting. Because what a lot of people don't know, your ascendant rising sign, which a lot of people don't go over, they just go over your basic astrological sign on the Western chart. They say, oh, you're a Capricorn, or you're a Taurus, or you're a Leo. Leo's this. There's the ascendant rising sign is just as important as your sun sign. Those that know how to do your whole chart. And your ascendant sign is based off the earth was traveling through a magnetic field, the grid, in a particular time period. So every hour, every 2 hours, it varies. It will change. And that's based on your ascendant rising sign. And I had a relative, and some people say, well, I don't believe in that stuff, Dorsey. That's folklore. That's urban legend. Well, here's what's a fact. Not my words. But a lot of hospitals reported many years ago, nurses, doctors, whenever there was a time of the full moon, which they say if 70% of our body is made up of water, whenever there's a full moon, tides in the oceans will rise. A lot of times when there's full moons, the tides will go up. There's a lot of energy flowing. But they said a lot of hospitals will see lots of cases whenever there's certain full moons or certain types of dates. So therefore, if 70% of your body is made up of water, and we know that the gravitational magnetic pull of the moon has an influence, helps balance the earth with the gravitational field, and the water rises in times of the full moon. Therefore, what does it cause? The water that's in your body, therefore, can cause emotional changes within you. And that can be tampered with by these technocrats, these cabal people that don't have good intentions with nefarious intentions. So that's how I connected the dots. So I had to be, just saying, highly intelligent to be able to figure out things like that. Just saying, to connect some dots. But it took experience connecting pieces, being with the right people, and being interested, have a genuine interest. So I'm just translating this information to show you guys this is very important. There's a scripture in the Bible that talks about how we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against the principalities and powers in darkness. But I want you guys to be encouraged that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. What's important that you share this information, you warn people. The cabal is real. And the reason I'm going over this information once again, I want you guys to have a well-rounded background. If you guys are studying redemption education, or you guys are learning or wondering, have questions, and you guys can be better equipped. Also, make sure you go to resetwars.com. Read that information. I've read practically all of it. I'm going to go over that again. I don't know how long he's going to have it up until, I guess, however many people join. By the way, if I, down the road, if God willing, I get deep pockets, I want to sign up for that, because I think it's going to be detrimental and navigating for what's coming down the pipeline. So I'm going to go back to the chat section real quick. I know I said a mouthful. I can be long-winded, but this was the connection to the Wizard of Oz, and there's other high-powered information. I tied this symbolism in with, but I'm going to go over this part. It says the fasces may be found on the reverse of the American Mercury head dime. The Roman deity Mercury was the god of commerce, and on the wall behind and on each side of the speaker's podium in the House United States Senate, each gold fasces being approximately 6 feet high at the base of the seal of the United States Senate are two fasces. I'm not, forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, cross. The lion in the story represents the at one time fearless American people as having lost their courage. And after a round with the IRS and defending your tin man, that also translates to tax identification number. 2, by the way, dummy corporation, vessel, vehicle, individual, employee, public corporation, all capital letters, written name. That's the NLanguage, the artificial person, legal fiction, straw man. You lose your courage to, you perhaps haven't known it, but the IRS has been dealing with you all along via your tin man under the hidden laws of commerce. Just like the tin man commerce has no heart, it is heartless. Yes, when they changed some years ago how you change your status, they put the IRS in charge, part of that, which is tied in with Homeland Security. By the way, you used to be able to go through Social Security Administration to change your status. By the way, there's still a process, a procedure, but they did, the cabal people, they set this up like a matrix, this hidden to tap into the other realm. By the way, when people ask about, hey, Dorsey, is that real about the $1 million in a birth certificate? How do I tap into that? Yes, I actually had a coworker some years ago I had got in a conversation with, I was training at the time, who asked me, and I told her, yes, validity behind the story. And, you know, many don't know, but I came across some information from an advanced individual I know. There's things I won't go into. There was even a audio that were on YouTube some years ago. They were removed. They kind of gave some secrets, and they had in the title of these audios, how to exit the matrix. They were really close. This guy that was connected to those people, I believe out of the Denver area, Judge Bruce Doucette, he did too much stuff what got him into trouble, by the way. And then, you know, you need more people when you're dealing with an enormous amount of gatekeepers, by the way. But there is powerful things you can do when you become proficient at learning the terminology, these words, how to file complaints, like, you know, basics, how to file like complaint against a police officer. You're supposed to be able to call the department if you don't have, you have trouble with that. depending on the situation, severity, contact the Department of Internal Affairs. You want to file a complaint against the lawyer, attorney. You have the Attorney Grievance Commission, Attorney Grievance Board, for against the judge, local judges, lower district judges. You have the Judicial Tenure Commission. There's paperwork I've heard, documents that some people that are highly advanced know how to do other than filing summons and complaints and motions, know how to do a writ of pondus or something to remove a judge from a bench or maybe from a case. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but there's powerful paperwork. There's things that when you become very proficient and advanced at the judicial system, the different procedures when there's bad gatekeepers, bad actors that have come across. I think for federal judges, you have to go through federal courts. There's certain districts that are over certain regions or certain jurisdictions. Like for Michigan, it may be Cincinnati. If you had some judge do something illegal or criminal that they weren't supposed to do. But, because these people are in positions of power, they oftentimes abuse their positions of authority. But these are things that I learned how powerful this information is. And that's why certain gatekeepers, minions, and villains who it's not in their interest. They don't want people in the general public or those people trying to free themselves to learn this type of information. By the way, these are reasons because of the power. Remember, the pen is mightier than the sword or the gun. It's things you can do. Like I had something happen. I talked about briefly at my job, by the way, with an individual without my permission, without my awareness, went into my tax records. I hadn't even filled out the paperwork. So they got purchased another security company, merged with the previous security company that I worked for, and changed my withholding information without my awareness. I spoke to someone in corporate America and she told me that was wrong. So I'm contemplating, there's different types of complaints. You also have the Title 42 lawsuits for federal court, sue people in their private personal capacity. You know what you're doing. You follow through. These processes are powerful. I've heard stories from people, actual stories of people that knew how to do liens and stuff, where people, police officers or people, corporations beg for mercy after they started having their cars liened up, their homes, beg for the release of liens, stuff like that, because they just thought they could just get away with stuff. Another thing people don't like is public attention. Certain corporations, when you contact the local news, which I encourage people to do, make things public, embarrass them. If you have a social media, I'm not afraid to dox people. That person's name can be put out there. They're that bold to do that. And then this is like the second time my records, because that deals with my social security number, what was done without and that was a violation of my due process of law. And this is the second time where I had my tax documents were openly open somehow. You know how every year you're supposed to get the statement. It was passed around the office. So why is this information? Why is this person in my records like that? That's a violation of the Privacy Act of 1974. See, I know these laws offhand, but the problem is it's just a matter of enforcing it, knowing what channels to go through. See, a lot of these companies, these corporations, these deadbeat jobs, some of these employers, and I'm not saying all of them, but some are very corrupt, what we're dealing with nowadays. And I saw the news did a story about this, by the way, are corrupt in their practices. But I believe in karma. I believe in Newton's third law of physics. To every action is an equal and opposite reaction. But I also have to follow up myself with contacting corporate about this to see what was going on. But I've never heard of such an individual so bold, and they're refusing to cooperate after they wanted me to fill out the forms they had already filled out without my awareness. And then they're refusing to accept how I filled them out. But my records have stayed the same. We wouldn't have had this problem in the first place. But why did they go in my file? Or who ordered them if someone ordered them to? Totally criminal, totally illegal. By the way, and I may be contacting. Unfortunately, I don't really like contracting with the statutory side because I don't know no other ways. But I'm looking into it, by the way. And we're talking about filing multiple complaints. You also, if you have situations with these gatekeepers, you also have the EEOC. And there's another entity, I won't say because I don't want, in case some of them are watching, by the way, because we have minions, gatekeepers out there who are up to evil, up to no good. Like we want to get Dorsey, we want to destroy him. But so I'm aware of that. That's why I can't give you guys everything. But there's a very reliable source that I have. There's another agency that I found out can assist you with those things. I won't go into detail about who or what they are, that may be just as powerful as me wanting to also contact the news and make this public. Because I know corporations, they don't like to get public attention, by the way. You know, and they maybe say they call my bluff on it, as I've been talking about it for a while, but I'm still looking. I say, okay, we'll see. But I have to weigh the pros versus the cons, you see. So there's a saying, you don't let the job work you, you work it. You know, work smarter, not harder. Yeah. So you guys kind of get the drift, just telling you guys that story. So I think I'm going to get ready to shut things down soon. I've gone over a mouthful. I'll probably have to do the part 3, but I've gone over a plethora of information so far. We were on page 3. We're just about halfway through this document, and I didn't even finish the other part in the redemption manual. Let me see if any more of you guys have joined the chat. Gerald Joke says, thanks again for this information. Okay. Oh, no problem. Appreciate you. Appreciate all watching. Guys, don't forget to thumbs up this video if you can. Get a chance. It helps me rank higher. Don't forget to smooch the like button. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell if you want to follow me. You can follow me at Dorsey's Resource on Twitter. At Dorsey's Resource. I'm on Facebook. I have Facebook pages specifically designed just for at Dorsey's Resource. So whenever I post my videos, just to give you guys a heads up, if you're already subscribed over there, you'll get notified. So you have multiple ways. I'm also on minds.com, by the way. These are like these other alternative independent media sites. I know I've been saying this for a while. I'm still working on it. I got to get on upload videos on Brighteon, Rumble, so I can start going in depth. And maybe like the old school days where I didn't, I used to do a lot of videos. They weren't live. Actually, they were recorded videos. And I said I need to go back to doing those, by the way, so I can have a lot more content for you guys that are interested in knowing this type of information, by the way. But I encourage you guys, get on those other platforms as well. So YouTube doesn't have all the power. And I'm going to tell you, Rumble's growing exponentially. Frank's speech, I got to get over there. I got to sign up. You also have MeWe, I heard, is also independent social media. I think Lisa Haven, she's put out information very similar to AJ, Alex Jones, by the way, who she's put out excellent reports. If you subscribe to her YouTube channel, in case you're wondering, evidence behind certain things. What I like about those platforms, those journalists that I both mentioned, independent journalists, they show you the documents, they show you the evidence, and I can cross-reference because I have a lot of family members and relatives who are on the left. So I see both sides. So I'm going to give you guys my analysis. And I can tell you the Democrats, they're more corrupt. Even though you have corruption with the Republicans, you have way more egregious corruption with the Democrats. And the ruling class are specifically using that party, the Democrat socialists, to bring in communism, a fascist state, by the way. When I hear Antifa, I will see them at the protests and yell at Republicans. No, the Democrats are the real, more the fascists, by the way. Look at who Ding Ding and Ho Ho are passing the draconian laws. So if you're a member of Antifa or Communist Revolution of America, those websites, I pay attention to what they're saying too, their ideology. I'm not a member of them, but I'm just saying you guys have it mixed up when you guys point the finger and say who's the fascists. The fascists are more so the Democrats, Obama, Hillary, Ding Ding and Ho Ho, Biden and Kamala, Gavin Newsom in California. Whitmer, those are the fascists. The Democrats are more so fascists. Look at the mandates. That's fascism. Anytime that's authoritarian. So hopefully judges and lawyers out there that are real, hopefully they're not paid off, will do the right thing, by the way, when it comes to the what. By the way, I hope they're making some good decisions so far. I commend the ones that have made the correct decisions. and help those people in New York. Even though I'm not in the state of New York, I feel for those workers that have had to take the poison, because, guys, it is sincerely many people that have died as a result of that. And that is very cruel and evil. So judges, lawyers, we need you to step up and do what's necessary and stop those mandates, by the way, because it's not helping. It's poison, by the way. And continue with those lawsuits out there. If you guys have deep pockets out there, commend you guys, are the ones that have the ability to sue, by the way, because that's another thing I was going to go into details. These mom and pop businesses, corporations, some of these mom and pop security companies that abuse people, by the way, as I was reading from one law firm's website, has them working as independent contractors, doing things like using their own personal vehicles when they're supposed to have a company vehicle available. It's like abuse of authority. Then they want to make the person start paying, and they, you're more like a 1099 contractor. I'm just saying, and they want you to be a 1040 W-2 employee, federal employee, and then they're not doing their part, but they want you to follow the rules. That's corruption. But they bet on you not making enough money to hire a lawyer. But I look at all the places that are hiring out here that are paying pretty significant too nowadays. I'm just saying. But the thing is, I got to free myself. I got to get out of this situation. I'm working on doing that. I'm still advanced at a certain level in this, but there's other levels that I intend on getting to, by the way. And there's advanced things that I know. And like I said, there's things that I don't go over because there's gatekeepers and bad people who won't do right with the information, and I'm just concerned about that, by the way. So if you guys out there, make sure you do the right thing. Share this video if you can, by the way. So getting back, I was going over the topic of this video before I got kind of sidetracked, was the Wizard of Oz's connection to redemption education, how this movie was coded just like the movie Matrix. To find the Wizard of Oz, you have to follow the yellow brick road, the gold bar road, follow the trail of America's stolen gold, and you'll find the thief who stole it. Remember, that book was created in 1914, one of the books. I don't know if that was the first year of the series. When Dorothy wore silver slippers, keep in mind that symbolized the silver represented when she followed the yellow brick road. That meant the silver following the gold out the country as they were getting ready to create the Great Depression, which was approximately 16 years later in the future. But they had to implement this first. So they created the Federal Reserve Act. So they put the symbolism in the movie. They coded it in a way. Maybe, I don't know if this is similar with Pastor Lindsey Williams said, not trying to get religious on you guys, but he said his elite buddies told him in the ruling class, they have to tell you before they do certain things. They have that before they plan it. So I don't know if they've always had this in place, but this is like more so cryptically. This wasn't up front, because pretty sure people way back then, they didn't have access to like the things we have today, like social media, the internet and stuff. They were able to do things differently. That's why I said, if you go read to resetwars.com and you read that document, it'll help you understand, decipher some of what I'm going over in this video. It complements the information what I'm sharing with you very well. If you check out Reset Wars, just read the information it has on there, and it complements what I'm going over. I don't want to spoil it for you guys, but those of you all who like to read, that are interested, and I say will behoove you because of what's coming down the road. By the way, so the concept is in 1933, or when the movie came out, which is based off the book. Dorothy, when she wore red slippers, the ruby slippers, the heels that she had, that symbolized her wedding signature. When we sign in red ink, what's symbolized by blood, by the way, because your signature is actually your property, not the tangible real estate, but your signature. Notice for a lot of different contracts, student loans, mortgages, work applications, medical applications, a lot of things still go back to your signature. By the way, even if they do it digitally, somewhere earlier on, you did the signature. When you sign a contract, the driver's license, state ID, things of the sort, marriage license, beautician license, barber license, all of those are forms of contract. DD 214 papers, that deals with the military. That's a form of a contract. It's not a coincidence, by the way. So it says, in the beginning of the movie, the wizard's counterpart was the traveling mystic, Professor Marvel, who Dorothy encountered when she ran away with Toto. His macabre shingle touted that he was acclaimed by the crown heads of Europe, past, present, and future. Professor Marvel must have really been a wizard to be acclaimed so by the future crown heads of Europe, even before they were crowned. Wow. See, I'm learning things too. I may not have read this document fully. Before the bankers stole America, they had long since overpowered the Christian kings and queens of Europe and looted their kingdoms. Maybe Professor Marvel knew something about the future that other folks didn't know. With a human skull peering down from its painted perch above the door to his wagon, the professor lectured Dorothy about the priests of Isis and Osiris, the pharaohs of Egypt, and the days of yore. Wow. Okay, this is going over a lot. It says, when Dorothy Gill and her new friends emerged from the forest, they were elated to see the Emerald City before them. Only a short distance away, the Wicked Witch of the West, desperate for the ruby slippers that Dorothy was wearing, would have to make her move before our heroes arrived safely inside the Emerald City gates. Yes, the Wicked Witch, by the way, represents, of course, obviously the gatekeepers within the system. She was a villain. The minions, the underlings of the ruling class elite of the Illuminati. I heard those when she sent those flying monkeys and those drones, they represented like the judges and lawyers, by the way, within the judicial system. Because it's going back, the reason she wanted Dorothy's red slippers, symbolically, the slippers symbolized by blood, your wedding signatures. A lot of times they want your signature, but they want to convert your Tin Man, which is your tax identification number, by the way, to a U.S. person, U.S. citizen, which is a contract statutorily, which keeps you from being with that other high level status dealing with the private side that's recognized by the State Department, that deals with correctly, properly changing your status, by the way. That's why they work so hard to keep you within this matrix, this system. And you can start to tell when you understand this better, when there's even people within your life. They could be employees, they could be bosses, supervisors, people that are even giving you a hard time. They can be secretly, quietly, similar to the Wicked Witch, as gatekeepers working against you, doing corrupt, evil things. Something to keep in mind. In the original book, The Wizard of Oz, by Frank Baum, published 39 years before the movie came out, okay, in 1939, and 3 years before the crash, the slippers were not ruby red, but silver. Okay, it goes over what I just mentioned. Wow. America still has its gold at that time, and the value of 1 ounce of gold was set at 15 ounces of silver. Then, as now, being the more plentiful, backed by gold, the currency of the day carried America to a position of preeminence throughout the world. But when the movie came out in 1939, the slippers were not silver, but ruby red. That's the reason they took this. When they took over, they brought us to the statutory side. She wanted her signature, the ruby red slippers symbolized by blood, by the way, which was tied in with your wedding signature. With the, when Dorothy, remember, she wanted to get back home, by the way. She didn't know it was through her signature. When she clicked her heels symbolically, many of you all saw the movie already when Glinda the Good Witch showed up, by the way, and mentioned to her all she had to do was, and it's symbolically some similarities into trying to exit the matrix, like these minions who've been doing some things. I know it's real simple, some simple things that to have the ability to get out. But one of the main things I've identified they're using as a weapon is the banking system, by the way. So it says between the years 1916 and 1933, America's gold was absorbed by the private non-federal reserve and shipped off to the Fed's owners in Germany and England because the use of Federal Reserve notes carry an interest penalty that could only be paid in gold. Our former currency, United States notes, carried no such interest requirement, but such was the bargain that came with the New World Order of the non-Federal Reserve in 1913. When the United States bankruptcy was declared in 1933, Americans were forced to turn in, surrender all their gold coins, gold bullion, and gold certificates by May 1st, May Day, the birthday of the communism and the Illuminati in 1776. That's the Bavarian Illuminati, started in Bavaria, Germany. That's where the Rothschilds are from. Remember, their surname was Bauer. When Amschel had to flee, he had to flee Frankfurt, Germany, by the way, when the plans were discovered, because there was a storm that happened when they used to receive their mail years ago. There was a horse by horse. The storm happened, and a horseman or whatever mail carrier was struck by lightning, and the mail was dispersed. So within that, the citizens at the time within that area discovered the plans, the letter from Amschel Bauer to Adam Weishaupt, that secretly back then, and that's how they discovered he was behind starting the Illuminati, aka the one world government, the New World Order. Check out the movie Money Masters. Spoiler alert. Money Masters goes over this. Monopoly Men, I just found out the actor that used to play in the show Quantum Leap from years ago. I didn't know Mark Dice did a video. He played and did the documentary Monopoly Men. My cousin told me some years ago, many people he knew woke up off the movie Monopoly Men. Monopoly Men, you still may be able to find it on YouTube. It complements the Money Masters very well. Also check out Ring of Power. And there was a movie, another documentary by the guy that hosted Money Masters, Bill Steele, I think, called The Secret of Oz. Check out that documentary as well. They all complement each other. And YouTube did stuff to also suppress these films, as maybe even why me and Currency 365, why we got shadow banned when he shared my previous video. And I noticed my last previous video didn't get as much of a reach as it should have. While it's a form of being shadow banned, because YouTube, I found out a while ago, was told by someone, I forgot who it was, someone in mainstream media, that asked YouTube, went behind the scenes, asked them to suppress the movies that people were learning about, these documentaries about the financial system, who the bankers were, the evil ones. And there's ways to trace their bloodlines, their lineage. Also get the book Bloodlines of the Illuminati by Fritz Springmeier, which I've gone over in the past. That will help you connect the dots, help you connect the pieces. That's why these evil, corrupt things they've done can be traced back to them. There's documentaries. That's why the inventors of Bitcoin wanted to remain anonymous, because they knew the people, when what comes down the road, what happens, if you guys are still around, you understand down the road, they don't want to be captured or get in trouble. Similar to how certain individuals, they like to be behind the scenes. But this is what actually happened, how their plans, this was discovered many years ago. By the way, if you check out that documentary, it explains when that accident had happened, when that postal carrier, this over in Germany, when it had was involved in a thunderstorm or something happened and the mail got dispersed and spread apart, and they discovered, that's how they discovered the plans of Rothschild. He had to flee Frankfurt, Germany. He had to move in with the Schiff family, they mentioned, but they changed their name. He changed his name from Amschel Bauer, that's their original surname, to Rothschild, which translates in German to Red Shield. Now, I don't know what Red Shield symbolizes, I guess shielding themselves or whatever in armor. And then they married into royalty. By the way, they were commoners who took his lineage and he taught his 5 sons the banking system, and sent them around the world to start, like the Bank of England, the Bank of America, Bank of France, and so on, until it spread apart. If you look at the bank that used to be Charter One Bank, that is now Citizens Bank, notice in the logo they had, because they used symbolism once again, was very similar to the Rothschilds. They had like a family crescent, similar to how in England they have a coat of arms. They had with arrows pointing through the shield. If you look at the symbol of what used to be Charter One Bank, or I don't know if Citizens Bank has that logo, but they had like arrows almost similar. That's like on the back of the dollar bill, but it was in like a circle. That's symbolic. That's how I knew that Charter One had a connection at the time, before it was, I guess, absorbed by it's now Citizens Bank, by the way, which was from overseas, over in Europe, by the way. Many of y'all who remember them in the Detroit, Michigan, or Michigan area, and there's other states, places. Charter One is, which used to be Charter One, is now Citizens Bank. They had the green logo, but they had a symbol with those arrows. That was the Rothschilds logo, or family, you could say family crescent similar to like the coat of arms. Those have meanings, and there's a pecking order in those types of ranks when you study the lineages and the bloodlines of who they are and their pecking order. So it says, talking to people who were alive at that time, the general sentiment towards such theft in 1933 bordered on a second Revolutionary War. Maybe it was too much of a clue or too much sought in their wounds for Dorothy to be skipping down the gold and yellow brick road in a pair of silver slippers. For whatever reason, a colorless, likely to provoke the people, was selected. With regard to the choice of ruby slippers colored red, one explanation is that on commercial documents and the like, red signifies private as opposed to public. Like when someone recently, not too long ago, asked me, does the IRS have a private side? One of my sources informed me that, yes, that's what the red, those 1099 red forms symbolize, the red and white. Now, some of the black and white forms do tie in with the private side too. But you have to know what you're doing. You have to maybe be advanced to know which ones, because there's a particular process. I remember when a certain individual was out last year teaching, going over that information, that you do something with this particular form and it will help elevate your status, by the way. I didn't do that particular process yet. Simple, what I got to get around to that. I'm slacking, your new social security card has a red serial number on the reverse side, but no matter their color, in the movie, the Wicked Witch of the West had big plans to get her hands on the precious slippers before Dorothy and crew could make it to Emerald City. Yep. Her tactic was to drug them into unconsciousness by covering the countryside with poppy flowers, poppies, the source of heroin, opium, and morphine. Yep, they use drugs. They also use the entertainment industry, Hollywood, music, movies, sports to dumb you down. I keep a fair balance because I know sometimes people, you need to have a getaway or downtime, because I've been accused by family members in the past of being overly consumed with this type of information, but I'm very well balanced. I had a friend of mine that asked me, he said, how do you balance out, he said, I don't know how to understand how you do it, man. And he has a full-time family. I don't have any children. So I kind of wonder how you do it sometimes. And so sometimes you need, I say, for downtime, but don't be overly consumed. Keep in mind, entertainment in Hollywood is used to also keep one distracted. The movies as well, by the way. And drugs, the party lifestyle. So this is breaking down the Wicked Witches. Her tactic was to drug them into unconsciousness by covering the countryside with poppy flowers, poppies, the source of heroin, opium, and morphine, and then waltz in and snatches the slippers. In other words, the best way to loot the gold was to dull the sense of the American people with a contrived crisis, the Great Depression, kind of similar to the scandemic we had recently. Just saying. Of course, now we have an illicit street drugs, heroin, cocaine, etc., and legal drugs such as Ritalin, etc., and television, bogus media dishing out controlled propaganda, CNN, MSNBC, wink, wink. The poppy drugs worked on Dorothy, the lion, and Toto, the flesh and blood entities, but had no effect on the Scarecrow or the Tin Man, the artificial entities. The two cried out for help, and Glinda, the good witch of the north, answered their cries with a blanket of snow that nullified the narcotic effect of the poppies on Dorothy, Toto, and the lion. As they all scampered toward the Emerald City, the city of green non-Federal Reserve notes, the new fiat money by decree, we hear the Munchkin singing the glories of the wizard's creation. You're out the woods, you're out the dark, you're out the night, step in the sun, step in the light. Keep straight ahead for the most glorious place on the face of the earth or the stars. The jingle abounds with Illuminati / Luciferian metaphors regarding darkness and light. Wow. So I'm going to get ready to shut. I said this before, but I'm going to get ready to shut it down. We're at the part with it says the Wicked Witch of the West made her home in a round of medieval watchtower ancient symbol of the Knight Templar of Freemasonry, which are given to practicing witchcraft and are also credited to be the originators of modern banking, circa 1099 AD. Anno Domini. The Wicked Witch of the West was dressed in black, the color that symbolizes the planet Saturn. I remember Jordan Maxwell talked about that some years ago. Saturnalian worship. That's why judges, in many cases, they wear a black robe when people will graduate. Most robes, sometimes robes are in different colors, whites, red, but there's a connection to that, the symbolism of black. A sacred icon of the Knights Templar, and interestingly, the color of choice of judges and priests for their robes. Oh, well, there you have it. So I left off at that part. I'll probably pick up the next part. I didn't even get the creditors and their bonds I had pulled up. This is a document by Gene Keating that ties in some of this stuff to the proof dealing with the straw man, like I read earlier. That's the N lingus, a third party who was put up in the name only to take part in a transaction and nominal party to a transaction, one who acts as an agent for another for the purposes of taking title to real property and executing whatever documents and instruments the principal may direct respecting the property person who purchased property for another, to conceal identity or real purchaser, or to accomplish something that is otherwise not allowed. Can't mix public and private. Okay, there's a lot with this Gene Keating document. Creditors and their bonds. It's a very good document to read, a lot of plethora of information, but I've gone over a mouthful, guys. So the title of this video was, once again, The Wizard of Oz's Connection to Redemption Education. This is series part 2. This is like the continuation. So I'm going to see if any more of you guys join the chat section. And we have in here, Chris Smith says, peace. I read Gerald Jelk's comment earlier, says, thanks for the information. Thank you all for joining. I appreciate you all for your time. If you want to subscribe to me, once again, you can follow me at Dorsey's Resource. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter, at Dorsey's Resource. Also check the description box when I get a chance to upload this video. I have to transfer where to follow me on social media. If you want private consultation, the requirements for bookings to reach me privately, I have my email address listed. You can also check the previous video, by the way, if it's not in the more recent video. Appreciate you guys' time. I'll leave you guys with these cliches. I'm your host, doing business as the legal fiction, John Dorsey. Until next time, guys, the marathon will continue. Real legends never die. They live in our hearts forever. Stay woke. Also, big shout out to, I noticed, one of my favorite basketball players and favorite basketball teams. Big shout out to Stephen Curry for breaking Ray Allen's three-point record. Major mad respect, mad props to. Rest in peace to Kobe Bryant. Real legends never die. They live in our hearts forever. The marathon will continue. Don't forget to like, smash the like button, comment, rate, subscribe. Until next time, guys, deuces.